I am so excited to be here today with Bex Morley. Bex is a licensed artist. She is represented by Brenda Mandley Designs, and you can find her art on anything from fabric to holiday decorations, all kinds of different adorable products. She serves as a coach for aspiring female entrepreneurs, and she recently released a new Skillshare class. So I love chatting with Bex whenever I get a chance, and I'm so happy to be interviewing you today.
Hi, Elizabeth. Thank you for that.
Good to see you. So to get started, will you just give a brief kind of overview of how you got started into the business of art for products?
Yeah, I got started quite late in life, really, because my art degree was a very long time ago, probably 25 years ago. And I didn't know what to do with that. And I had been criticized by art professors that my work was too commercial. And at the time, that seemed like the most terrible thing. And I know, isn't that crazy? And then I was looking online, I'd always kept a sketchbook, so I'd kept drawing. I just wasn't sure what to do with it. And then I found these classes online called Make Art That Sells. And it was one of those penny drop moments that, oh, you mean commercial as in somebody would buy this and put it on a product. And so that was a slight, I can't quite believe it took me so long, but you know, life gets in the way and other things happen, and I had family and all that sort of thing. So yeah, I came to it a little bit late, and that was in 2015 I started taking those classes.
Oh, okay.
And then in 2000, and I was actually running another business at the time. I was running my jam business, and then I had to sell that because my kid got sick and I had to homeschool him. So I sold that in 2017, and then later that year I got picked up by Brenda Mandley, my agent. So that's when I actually started licensing. I hadn't licensed anything before she came along. I was at that precipice of thinking, oh, I'll reach out to clients, or do I reach out to agents? And then she contacted me, so that made the decision for me.
Oh, perfect. So you were building your portfolio through taking that course, and you were just like posting it online, and that's how she discovered you? Or
yeah, she found me on Instagram, and I think probably was following the Make Art That Sells hashtags. So that's a tip. If you're part of a class or you're part of something, it's always worth using their hashtags, because some people do follow them and do look for them. So I know Instagram's changed since then. It's changing all the time, but at that time it worked. So.
That worked. Awesome. I love that, because yeah, I mean, I only wanted to be a commercial artist. That's, it's so different from my experience, because I was just talking about this recently. Like I guess I was really lucky, because I have a sister who's 10 years older than me, and she was a graphic designer. And so she was already working when I was like in high school. She was already 26 and working as a graphic designer. And then my mom she was a children's librarian, but she went to school for art education. And so there was never a kind of a question of like, can that be a career? And in my mind, I was never into the fine arts part of it. Like I never felt, I'm left brain creative through and through. So like the idea of like going off into a bubble and, painting for galleries and stuff like that just never even occurred to me. So being commercial is all that I ever wanted to be. So it's so funny.
Awesome. Like it wasn't what I wanted to do either. My degree was actually called a creative arts degree, and I was doing art and music. It was very much, you could do art, music, or drama, and you took two of those and then specialized. So it was kind of it was a slightly pretentious Kids from Fame type of course.
Okay, all right.
Except that I wasn't doing the drama, I was just doing the art and the music, which was the least common combination. And I ended up majoring in music because for some reason I did really well at that and really poorly at the art. And it was focusing on being different. You couldn't do anything that was sort of recognizable as overly influenced by something else. The whole point of it was to be as creative as possible. There was a lot of conceptual art, and that just wasn't really my thing. I like creating pretty pictures, and that was frowned upon, which is why saying that my art was commercial was such an insult for that course. Even though had I been on a graphic design course, if I'd been on a different course or even an illustration course, it would have been different. So
yeah, that's
so interesting.
But here you made it, so that's the thing.
I got there eventually.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because you're doing the same things, and that's so wonderful. welcome. You've been doing it for a long time, but I still feel I need to, anyone who's newer, I just feel like I have to welcome them, because I'm always so happy to talk to people who have discovered this from something totally different. I mean, we know in our industry, there's a lot of people maybe who came from graphic design or children's book illustration into this, which is like a short jump, but a jump nonetheless. But, the people who came from like historical, whatever, who was like archaeology. I feel like one of my students was a major in archaeology. Like there's just, it's just so, I love it,
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah. So I came from jam making and working at the Royal College of Music in London and working for a venture capital company. I did quite a lot of different jobs, but it's amazing how eventually you start looking back and going, actually, some of the information I got there was quite useful. And it's quite useful to have a different perspective from a different industry.
Yes.
And then apply that to what you're doing now, because you have, every industry approaches things in different ways. So it is actually quite interesting to have done
that. Is such a great point. It's so true. And because people feel like, I feel like a student or designers who are new feel like, oh, I'm going to look like an amateur if I'm pitching myself. I'm going to look like, I at least hear all these, concerns from newer designers of like, oh, I'm not experienced. I have no, I don't know what to put in my pitch email, because I can't say like, I've been doing this for 10 years or whatever. But there's that other perspective is so important in making different connections and being able to grow in a different way. Like it's not having the exact same experience as someone else is not going to get you any further. That's such a
there isn't one pathway to success. It's everyone can do it differently, and everyone can have a different perspective, and everyone can write their emails differently. And that there isn't, if we all use the same template, people will get pretty bored anyway. So it really isn't that one thing. And I think the more important it is to us, the more we blow that out of all proportion. In terms of like, I can't write an email to someone. It's like, why? You write emails all the time. You send texts all the time. There is nothing wrong with your ability to type an email.
Right.
And yet, because it's so, the result has become so important to us that we can blow it out of the water and think, this is so stressful, I might get rejected. It's like, yeah, you probably will. Yeah. That's the reality of it. Yes. And these are just people that you're emailing. And then when I had a meeting with some clients during the early on in the pandemic, we just had a group meeting to discuss plans for designs. And I'm looking at them thinking, they're half my age. Why am I so terrified of these people? I'm 50 years old. I don't need to be terrified of people. I have done so many different jobs in so many different things that would terrify them. And yet, because it's important to us, and our artwork is personal to us, we make it this big deal. And I think we have, it's, so much of that is mindset of being able to overcome and just write an email off the cuff and say, hey, just reaching out, wondering if you're interested in this. Yeah.
100%. Of course, I agree with all of that. Definitely. It is. It's just, they're just people. So do you currently, do you mainly license your work, or do you do buyouts and freelance work through your agent, or, what kind of split for your art income are we looking at? Do you license?
Yeah, all my commercial work goes through my agent. And I don't really take on any private work. I have done in the past, done some little pet portraits or things, but I find that the amount of time it takes versus the income it generates isn't worth it for me. So most of my income probably comes from outright sales.
Oh, okay. So a lot of buyouts.
A lot of buyouts. And although I often request, we have a system with Brenda where she asks us to put a couple of letters at the end of our design name to indicate whether we only want to license it or whether it's open to whatever deal that she can get. So we get to choose whether we do that as artists, as individuals, and then she negotiates on our behalf. And sometimes I've had something that's licensed over and over again, which is obviously the dream. We all want that passive income from that one magic design. But the reality is most of them just sit there. So I get more money if it's an outright sale, because you often get more per deal than you do from licensing. Licensing is always a bit of a gamble. And, having licensed my first fabric collection, I thought was going to be amazing. and it took me ages to design it.
Mm,
And I got it out there, and I think it was less than $2,000. And there was
yeah.
only one release of the fabric line. So although it's royalties on sales, they only have one big sales run and manufacturing run, and then you're done. So it was a gamble, and I could have made the same or maybe even more money if I'd outright sold individual designs within that collection. So
yeah,
I think
that's such a good, that's a great point too. Yeah, because, you know, and certainly it is like, I mean, I want that to be the dream. That is my dream too, is like license things over and over again. And that's kind of, you know, I mean, I also took Make Art That Sells, and I took it in 2013. And that was when I reached out to a few agents and ended up working with my agent, Jewel Branding. But yeah, I was like, oh, I'm just going to make this portfolio. Because at the time I was I had worked in-house and I had been freelancing for about a year. So pretty much all my work was for clients. And so therefore I didn't own the copyrights. I was just doing work for hire. So I didn't have much of it. I had a little portfolio, but not much. And so I was like, okay, I'm just going to like put in the time. I'm going to make this portfolio. And not that your portfolio doesn't evolve, but I was like, and then it's just going to slowly start paying my bill. And it's like, yeah, I do have a couple that do, you know, continue to get picked up, but most of it is just sitting there. It really is.
Yeah.
And my agent doesn't sell outright, really. I think they might sometimes do flat fee licensing, but they really don't do selling outright, or at least I don't think they do it a lot. Maybe they do it if they get like a really specific thing, but it's not really part of their business model. So yeah, I just have a lot of stuff sitting around.
Yeah, and I get some commissions as well through my agent, and I love commissions because you know you're going to get paid.
Yes, exactly.
So although it doesn't add to your portfolio, it will, and sometimes it does, because it depends on the commission and on the arrangement. If you're being commissioned for something that's going to be licensed, then you can still add it to your portfolio. So they're not always, but then that's usually licensing, which again is the royalties, which is again a bit more of a gamble. So
yeah, exactly.
Pros and cons for licensing for sure.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, I think that's a good lesson to remember, to being open to different types of income, because I know that I've definitely seen the opinion that, oh, you know, never give up your copyright kind of thing. And it's like, well, or do you want to get paid? I mean,
yeah,
like, I mean, it would be wonderful, but that doesn't happen for everyone. I guess there are some people who just have, you know, never give up their copyright and are very successful with license. I mean, there definitely are, but it's not everyone.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, I'm happy for them. But at the same time, is that the artwork I created 7 years ago, I now look at and go,
yeah,
I don't love that. And I would have rather sold it than it was still just sitting there, because our style evolves all the time. We get better. And I think especially when you're starting, you can become so attached to something that you're proud of because it took you so long to get to that stage that you become very possessive of it. And it's like, oh, I can't sell it to anyone. And then, you know, 5 years later, if it's still sitting there and you had said no to a sale, maybe you'd change your mind because you got a
if they came back another, yes, I know what you're saying. That's that's one of my favorite lessons from working in-house, is that I'm not really precious about my art, and I never really get that attached to it. So I am grateful for that lesson for sure, but I understand why people do. So you sort of touched on this. So you weren't looking for, because my question was, did you look for an agent right off the bat? But you were working on your portfolio and you were just getting to the point where you were trying to decide.
I had a list of agents. So I had like a little list, and I got the agent's name, and I think I had a short list of about 7 agents or agencies that I thought would be a good fit. Because obviously there's no point going for an agency that only does children's books if I don't illustrate children's books. Like you have to do, it's not like any agent will do. You need to find the agents where you think that your work would fit in and they can license or sell your work. And Brenda was on my list. So when she reached out, it was like, oh, okay, well, that saves me the trouble.
Yeah, that's perfect. And so when she reached out, what kind of, did you do any sort of like, did you talk to any of her artists, or did you do any sort of, or were you just like, that sounds great and I'm in?
Yeah, almost, because I was pretty inexperienced. I wouldn't recommend that to anyone, but I was pretty inexperienced at the time. But I had a meeting with her, we had a Zoom call or a Skype call, whatever it was. And then we had a little chat about how it all worked. And she said, go and think about it. And during that time, I did contact some of her current artists and some of her former artists, which I thought might be a really good way to, you don't want people who are just super enthusiastic. Just in case there was something if there was something lacking somewhere, you're more likely to get that from a former artist. Right. And anyway, I contacted a number of people, a few of them got back to me, and there were no red flags. So, those who had left for reasons that weren't negative for me.
Right.
So
gotcha.
It was more personal.
Yeah. The agent thing is, that's such a big question in our industry, because people are like, when they get started, do I need an agent? Should I have an agent? Is an agent better? This, that, the other. And like, I've only really had an agent for licensing. So it's, I don't have the other side of it, but from what I can, there's pros and cons to both ways.
Definitely. And I think I have heard some horror stories about agents too, where somebody's got an agent and yet it was a more of an informal arrangement. But because they felt they had an agent, they just sat back and were like, oh, well, I don't have to do any marketing, any reaching out because I have an agent. Mm-hmm. So they were just creating work and sending it to the agent, and then the agent didn't do anything with it.
Yeah.
And that held them back, because had they not had the agent, then they would have been reaching out to clients and doing that thing which is uncomfortable to start with, but then gets easier as you do it more often. And they would have been way further in their business after a year than just sitting back and waiting for an agent to do it for them. Plus, if you don't have good communication with your agent, there's always going to be some times where you just think, oh, well, that wasn't the best price for the amount of work that went into it, because the agent is just assessing what they see and what the client wants and trying to get the best deal all round. They don't know that maybe that design took you way too long. Because if it's not evident, which in some ways is good, because it stops you getting too precious about the fact that you took a long time on something, but sometimes also that maybe that wasn't what you wanted to have it put on. Maybe that wasn't the deal that you particularly wanted. And so you need to be able to communicate with your agent. And sometimes agents can't place an artist's work. They're taking a risk when they take you on as much as you're taking a risk with them. Mm-hmm. And if they can't place your work, then you can end up paying agency fees and not getting enough to even cover that. Right. And that's a reality. Sometimes it just doesn't place as well as the agent hoped it would, and because they don't want to take on a copycat of your work. They want to take on someone different that they think they can place, but then who knows how the clients are going to respond to it until it's actually worked its way out and they've got that experience.
Yeah, it's such a interpersonal relationship, like, because I've heard, horror stories as well. And I've heard like, oh my God, I love my agent. And I've heard those two things about the same person sometimes, like, Absolutely. Or the same agency sometimes, like I've heard plenty of different stories about people with agents, and some good, some bad. And to a point that it's up to the individual and how the individual likes to work. And sometimes you really do just have to try it and see how it works. You can't always predict beforehand. And it's just a matter of when you're I would say my advice for any artist is, as much as I know we don't usually, especially when we're starting out, have extra cash to blow to use everywhere. That one time I hired, well, now it's been more, but for most of my career, the one time I actually hired a lawyer was for them to look at my contract with my agent, because my agent knows contracts. So when they're doing deals, they do multiple deals and whatever. So when licensing deals, I don't really need to worry about it so much. I can ask them questions. But when I signed with my agent, I really wanted someone to take a look at it, because I wanted to make sure that, the exit clause and that kind of thing. So those are things that you really want someone to take a look at, is how long you're going to be in that relationship. And if you can do some sort of trial period, if you do, like I think my original contract was for 3 years, but it was like, if after a year we both agree, whatever, then we can kind of go our separate ways and whatever it is. So it's like having those sort of outs, and then making sure that the agent doesn't like own your work for the next 7,000 years afterwards, just because you were once signed with them. Those are some important things to look at when you're looking at your signing with an agent.
Absolutely. And the contract needs to protect both parties. So you have to accept there is going to be some sort of get out clause, that you can't just run off and expect everything to come back to you so that you can just set up on your own, because agents have to protect themselves too. They're investing in you. So yeah, it's definitely a two-way process.
Yeah,
sure.
Totally. So I think, there are a lot of artists trying to do what you have done, which is come from a totally different career. And even though you did have some, you had art background, but you didn't have any career experience in art. And then essentially taking some online courses and getting discovered on Instagram by your agent, and, and then now you have all this successful career. I know it wasn't that easy. That made it sound really easy. Yeah. There's no way it was that easy, but what advice would you give to someone who is currently where you were, 7 or 8 years ago? Someone who's has taken some classes, is starting to work, or starting to realize that their art could be great on products, is building that portfolio, but, isn't sure what's, if they could really make a career out of it.
I think a lot of people get in their own way by overthinking what they're doing, and it's really not rocket science. So don't overcomplicate it. You create work, you share your work, and you repeat. Like when I remember doing an exercise that I found in a book that I was reading about how to work smarter, really not harder. And it said, if you write down on one side of a piece of paper all the big all the things that you do in your business, all the things that you think you should do. Like, there are things that we feel that we should be doing that we're not doing so much, whether it's posting regularly, whether it's having your newsletter or your email sign up, whether it's putting everything on every print on demand thing, whatever it is that you're currently doing, you write it down on one side of a piece of paper. And on the other side of the piece of paper, you write down all the big moves forward that you've had, the sort of like moments of recognition, or whatever has moved you towards your goal, like being picked up by an agent, or selling something, or licensing something, things that you're proud of, or winning a competition, whatever it is that you're proud of that you felt was a big step forwards. And then you circle those things and you draw a line to the action that led to that achievement. And so you draw these lines, and what you find is actually it's only a few of those actions that are actually leading to the big leaps forward. It's not the everything. It's not all the tiny little things that you feel that you should be doing often. And that's when I came up with my list of 3, which if I ever get overwhelmed, I just repeat to myself, create, share, repeat. Because that is essentially the process. You create the artwork, you share it with people, and then you do it again. So and share means reaching out to clients as well as sharing.
Right. It's not just putting it on Instagram.
That's hope-based marketing. You can't just put it out there and hope for the best. Right. That's not really a strategy. You do have to target people and who am I sharing it with, and why am I sharing it? And actually really think about what you're doing. What are you creating for? Who are you sharing that with? What's the goal here? And repeat that process, rather than getting stuck in your own head going, I don't know the perfect client. Well, there isn't one. So stop looking. Look for clients that might be a good fit and send them an email and find out. And until you've tried.
And ask questions, right?
And ask questions and put it out there. You don't know whether people are going to like it. You don't know whether your art's going to be a good fit. You don't know whether these people are going to be easy to work with, or they might be a horrible client and you don't want to work with them, but you don't know any of this until you start getting your work out there and start making connections and start talking to people. So I think people are often looking for an excuse, like, oh, well, my website's not quite ready yet. Okay, well, give me your Instagram link instead. Oh, well, I haven't got my email list set up. So you've got find their email address on LinkedIn, because they're not going to sign up for your email. They just probably anyway, because clients not to. They don't want more emails. It's up to you to contact them, not them to contact you. So, and oh, do I need a password protected area of my website?
Oh yeah.
Right. No, if you haven't sold or licensed this anything, get it out there, let people see it. Don't protect it too much and hold everything so close to your chest and, you know, wrap yourself up in cotton wool. It's just like, get it out there. Stop being afraid of the rejection and the knowledge that you're going to get. And
I like that.
There's no failing. You are just testing all the time. And if the test doesn't work out how you expected, then now you have more information.
Exactly. I love that. Yes. Get started, right? Just start and see what happens. I love that. Create, repeat. No, create, share, repeat. I like that. That's a good one. Well, obviously you are a wealth of wisdom, and so it's no surprise that you have recently published your first Skillshare course. And so this is a topic that we hear about a lot in this industry about, you know, being a teacher, being an artist. Is teaching, you know, the only way to make money? If you're teaching, are you enough of an artist to be teaching? All this stuff. So, you know, teaching is not the only way to make income in this industry, of course. But what made you decide to try producing a course at this juncture, let's say?
I wanted to test it.
There we go.
It's all about testing. Same reason as I opened my online shop that I talked about forever, and I just got annoyed with myself contemplating with it. So I'm like, okay, I need to stop thinking about it and do it. And the same thing happened with the class. I thought I need to stop thinking about maybe this. We do a lot of thinking when we're self-employed because we are entrepreneurs. We have to make all these tough decisions for ourselves. Right. And I'd thought about it, and quite a few people had said to me, you should. They don't, not in a bad way, in a, oh, I think you'd be good at this way, which is really nice to hear. So I thought, well, unless I've done it, I don't know. So I decided that January, February, March, the first quarter of the year would be the best time because it's likely to be the quietest time. That was actually incorrect. It turned out to be a really busy quarter. And so I had this ironic situation. I decided to create a course on how to choose the right income streams, because we hear about multiple income streams. And
another favorite topic.
Yeah, so it was more about, well, how do you know which ones are right for you? You can't just copy what someone else is doing because that might not work for you and might not work for your life. And it's all about how you fit these things together and the cumulative effect of having that many income streams. And does that work for you? All this sort of thing. And then there was the irony of me recording classes at 11:30 at night because I'd run out of time during the day because I got like 3 client projects that came in during that quarter. And so I'm recording this at 11:30 saying, oh, be careful not to take on too much because everything will suffer, as I've, you know, touched up the bags under my eyes and drunk another quart of coffee to get through this.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, this funny. Is a slightly ironic time to be recording this. However, it was a test, and it's always going to be hardest the first time you do it because I was learning the tech side. I didn't know that your shutter speed had to relate to your frame rate. And
my gosh, I still don't know that. I don't even use I use like my phone still.
This is on your phone, like downloading an app that had been recommended on my phone so I could do various things. And oh yes, so there was a lot of technical issues that I had that maybe other people don't have. Maybe I was just really unlucky that every single route I chose, and then I edited hours of it and exported it, and it came up with a black screen, just the audio. And I was like, oh my God. And nobody could fix it. I was on to Adobe for 6 hours and nobody could fix it. So I had to do it again. Things like that.
It's faster the second time, I know that much. Not just the second class, but recording the same thing over again, because I haven't had that same problem, but I've definitely had to re-record for various reasons. So
brutal. But yes, so I did it because I wanted to try it and to see how that worked and whether I enjoyed it and what response I'd get from it and that sort of thing. So yeah.
So has the course, did it come out in March or April?
Yes.
Sure. Is it too early to kind of decide if you, after doing it and what, first of all, is it a gold rush? Tell us if it's a gold rush.
Sadly, it's not,
Oh,
retirement
no.
level that I was hoping for. I can see how if you focus on teaching and you do a lot of classes, I can see how that passive income could be very lucrative. And I think the top Skillshare teachers do really, really well. My concern is always, but then I'm spending my time doing that instead of creating art. And is that what I want to be doing? It's not just about the money. Otherwise, none of us would be artists. Let's be honest. We're doing this because we're creative people and we love doing creative things. So I'm always trying to strike that balance between I want to make money, but I also want to do creative stuff. And making classes creative. It's a different kind of creative. And it fit in quite well with the coaching that I've been doing, which is completely separate, really. And so, yeah, it's not hugely lucrative at this stage. It doesn't help that I completely forgot to put the link on my website or market it at all.
Well,
so I did the create bit. I was not so good at the sharing bit.
You got time. It's yeah, and of course Skillshare is its own, it's sort of its own way model, kind of, because I feel like for Skillshare success, it is constantly putting up new classes and having them build up, and then as people discover your newer ones that are like propped up by the algorithm or whatever, then they might go back to your older ones, and just having a large collection, which, which is, I don't know if that's, I was not very successful on Skillshare, but I also didn't give it I didn't want to give it 1,000%, that one was sort of.
And it's, I think all our businesses are such a combination of what you want to do, what you enjoy doing, because if you don't enjoy it and you don't want to do it, you're not going to be good at it, however much. And it doesn't mean to say you couldn't be good at it. It just means that you're not going to give it the same amount of energy and enthusiasm that you give something that you do love doing. So try it out, see if you like it. And I haven't yet decided whether I'll do another one.
Fair enough. My that reminded me of something that my business coach told me that I was like, yes, was she said to me, because I was kind of, like trying to assess of the way to get to a certain spot or sell a certain number of courses or what, I don't even remember what I was specifically, but it was like, you don't want to be like everyone else. So why are you trying to prove you can do what everyone else can do? It's like,
it's so true.
Good point. That's a very, very good point.
I often see the same people sort of say, oh, how do I stand out and be unique as a signature artist? And then how does everyone else do it? It's like, how do I do this? It's like, well, you do it your way if you want.
What brushes are you using, and what Procreate brushes and Illustrator brushes are you using? And
I want to be different like you.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, it's tricky. It is its own creativity, and I have noticed now, I don't know what the real, there's so many external forces as well, but I launched a large class at the beginning of the pandemic, basically. So
nice timing.
Yeah. So it's, I feel like I've been sort of in a creative dip for since the beginning of the pandemic, but I don't know if that's, totally, some of it was definitely pandemic, related, but now, I mean, I come in, it goes up and down, but I think a lot of my creative energy really is going towards like YouTube videos and like blog posts and kind of content type stuff. I mean, my courses they take creative energy too, but now that I've created them, it's sort of more maintenance more than anything. Not that I won't create new ones in the future, I guess, but yeah, it's like, what are you interested in? Because I try to like get back focused on like, all right, let me work on some licensing work for a while. I mean, I continually work on like freelance client work. So that, kind of keeps me moving, but having new ideas for licensing and stuff like that has been harder for me in the last couple of years. And I am like, okay, this week I'm going to just look at art. I'm just going to be doing licensing stuff. And then I'll get like really good idea for like a YouTube video or something. And then I'm like off writing on that. And it's so, I don't know, it's like that part of the brain has taken over lately of like actionable steps and like teachable moments. So
yeah, that's great, because that means that's what you're enjoying doing at the moment, and you're creating all this content, which is so valuable to people. And I think that's one of the things that I was talking about in the class, when you were talking about considering multiple streams for income. It's not just how many you've got, it's the work that's involved in each one, because it's easy to add a stream of income if the same work is involved. So people can break down art income as licensing, sales, print on demand. Essentially, you're still creating artwork. That's the bulk of the work, is you're creating art, and then you're putting it in different places or offering it up in a variety of ways to different people. So yes, it's multiple streams of income, but it's based around the same chunk of work. Now, when you start creating online content and writing courses, this is now something, it's a different chunk of work. It's all your mental processes and your creative skills are going into creating that content. And you could say that creating your blog posts and your YouTube videos are the same sort of work as creating your courses. It's that information and disseminating information and thinking about how to present it best and thinking about what topics people are struggling with. And that's a sort of similar work in terms of the different streams of income you can get off that. But switching between the two is really quite hard, especially when you've worn yourself out doing one. Like I find that I can do artwork in the afternoon if I've already come up with the design ideas, because then it's more like coloring in. And so when I'm tired, I can do that in the afternoon. I can sit in front, I can have Netflix on, I can sit on the couch, I can do things on my iPad and think, oh, that looks pretty, I'll try this, because it's a more relaxed process. It's not that intense creativity, which you sometimes get when you're coming up with designs and the ideas in the first place, or you're coming up with content. So I try and manage my day so that I'm doing the hard thinking in the morning, or the designing in the morning, and then something a little bit more relaxed in the afternoon.
Yeah, I love that. Brainstorming is like my least favorite part of the artistic process. I used to say that. I don't know if that's still true, but it really used to be. It's like the brainstorming part is hard. It's just I like the execution part, is just like the coloring, the drawing, the whatever. Yeah. Even though that can be frustrating in its own way, because it doesn't always line up with what's in here, but
no, that's sometimes things flow and you create these designs really quickly, and other times you're like, oh, I don't like it yet.
Yeah,
I've been working at it for hours and I'm frustrated.
I've been definitely having a hard time finding flow, though. Yesterday I had a really great designing day, so I'm excited about that still.
Excellent.
All right, one more question and then we're going to dive into my new segment. But the last question is, so you are, as anyone who's watching might be able to tell, because she keeps giving such good advice, Bex actually got involved with Selfmade, which that's like a female entrepreneurs like course, right? Can you tell me a little bit about what it is exactly?
It's a 10-week online course for female entrepreneurs who want to launch or grow their business. And it's run by Brit & Co. I don't know if you know Brit & Co, but it's a lifestyle website which has lots of blog posts from everything from DIY to recipes to fashion tips to beauty tips to and small classes. But then this is their bigger class where it's a 10-week process and it ends with a pitch week. So you pitch your idea to the sharks, essentially, who are the coaches. And I'm one of the coaches.
That's awesome.
So yeah, it takes you through the steps of how to basically how to launch a business, all the things that you need to think from a very much a business perspective. It is not specifically in any industry, so it's not art specific at all. But that's how I got into it, was I volunteered as a mentor. They have mentors. And I volunteered as a mentor, and then my mentees were so lovely and gave me such nice feedback that they invited me back as a business coach. Oh, wow. So that was really nice. I didn't apply for that.
So did you take that course, or you just heard about it and you were like, I could give some art advice and whatever people need, and then it spiraled?
Yeah, somebody else who's a mentor in the course said they're often looking for surface designers, because often surface pattern designers take the course because they're thinking, oh, I'm launching myself as a business. And although it's not specifically related to that, it's relevant to launching any business, whether it's a product, a service. Yeah, online, offline. It's more of the general things that you need to know behind it, behind the business. So it's a very business focused. And Britt, who is the founder of Brit & Co, her name is Brittany. Britt is a venture capitalist too. So she comes from the tech world. She used to work for Google, and she's launched this company, and she's a founder of various companies now, and she's a venture capitalist. So she's very involved in business and finance and tech. So that's her background, and she wanted to create a course specifically for female or people who represent as female entrepreneurs, and to help them. And it's all taught by women, and they often have visiting business people. So they've had Gwyneth Paltrow on as a visiting teacher, and they had Anna Rifle Bond as a visiting teacher, which will probably be more relevant to everyone here, because I was like, yeah, I get to see.
Yeah, definitely.
So they have guest teachers as well to share their expertise, and to encourage women to get involved, and to have more confidence in the fact that they can do it. And
yes,
I can't tell you how many times within the coaching sessions, because I do a live coaching session every week to help them through the training for that week. And we do lots of live coaching and breakout rooms, and actually sort of making people do the thing that makes them uncomfortable in a live situation. So everyone's struggling together and it doesn't feel so scary. And the amount of times I've said, okay, do this with the confidence of a mediocre white man.
That is one of my favorites. I love that one. Yeah, it's so true. And that, honestly, yes, I love that you're involved in this. This sounds like it really sounds right up my alley as well, because that is something that I've found so central to why I really enjoy doing the teaching, is because this industry is so predominantly women, and women are so predominantly not standing up for themselves and not asking for what we should have, and or just to be equal and all that other stuff. That any way that I can give a little shove of confidence to anyone and show them that it's really not that hard. Well, it's hard. It's not that it's not hard, but that everyone's deserving of it as much as anyone else, and our
mindset can totally make it harder, because if we get 100%. Stuck in our head, because the actual physical thing that we're doing, like sending an email, it's not hard. And you're not going to die.
Right.
But we can become so small and so scared of everything. And I think particularly as women, particularly if society, the role that society gives us is smaller, more demure, less asky. We don't want to become across as pushy or brash or not good enough. We have this perfectionism. We have this, how's everyone going to judge me? Which men don't have as much of. And I'm not saying that men don't suffer from it too. Of course they do.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that often women suffer from it way more. And especially if they're then stuck at home with small children, your world gets even smaller, and you become less and less confident in your ability to do other things. And so as somebody who has done lots of different jobs, and then been a stay-at-home mom for a while, and then started my own business whilst doing that, I recognized in myself a lot of the lack of confidence. And I remember as I was approaching 50, I was thinking, so am I grown up enough now to do that? It's like, what am I waiting for? Am I waiting to be a grown up? To feel like a grown up, to feel confident? And it made me realize that confidence, you can't wait for it. You have to have courage. You have to do uncomfortable things that make you feel a bit sick, that you really don't want to do, that you have massive resistance to. And if you can have the courage to push through that, then you start to feel confident, because you realize that you didn't die, and it wasn't that scary, and nobody really noticed. Anyway.
That's the real thing. That's the thing. People are like, talk about like launching in my course, we go over how to, put together a website really quickly, and people get tripped up. They're like, basically it looks too all over the place. I'm like, unfortunately, guess what? Push publish anyways, because no one's going to see it until you direct them to it. It's not like you're getting organic traffic.
I know. And we get in our way. We go round and round in our head going, it's not good enough yet. It's like, I need to be perfect before I can launch. And then you launch, it's like, no one's looking anyway. That's so depressing. But you have to So yeah, I just
So
thought,
is that like those, do you think those are the issues that most come up? Because I was curious what issues you see regularly with all female entrepreneurs that you're dealing with. Is confidence, do you think, one of the biggest ones?
yeah, mindset's huge,
Yeah.
I think, and mindset around money and people
Mm.
feeling that they're worth it.
Mhm.
And I think there's a lot of classes which talk about go for your dreams, reach for the stars, and that's great. But at the same time, let's have some practical advice behind it so you actually know what you're doing.
Mm.
And I'm not really a big fan of mindset without practical tips to go with them, because it's all very, we've all seen Britain's Got Talent or Somebody's Got Talent or the X Factor, when someone's been told they can do whatever they like, and then they get up there and go, oh, okay, well, your mom thinks you're great. So it's just like, that's not enough. You can't just believe. You have to have good practical knowledge and advice, but there needs to be a balance. And I think what often happens with women is that we tend to over prepare. We have way more knowledge than we have execution. And so sometimes when you want to do something and you say you want to get into some sort of email marketing and you're not really sure how to do it, so there's a gap between what you want to do and where your knowledge is. And once you've brought that knowledge up to where you need to be to do it, then you should do it. Women, I think, go like this. We tend to think we need a master's degree in email marketing before we can send our first email. And I think that's really, really common to, like, it's almost as if by over educating ourselves, we can take the risk out of it all. And that's not true. You're just wasting time. You only need as much education as you need in order to execute. And then you need to actually do it. And I think the doing is the hardest part of all of this. It's great to have the clarity. It's great to have the dreams. It's great to have the information. It's great to have the knowledge. At some point you have to do it. Otherwise you're just, it's like being stuck in school the whole time. You're not actually doing it.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, I couldn't agree more, because done is better than perfect is one of my often repeated mantras.
Yeah. And one of the things that the Selfmade course really focuses on is saying, do it and start small and scrappy to test it. Keep testing it, because that's how you build, you build a little scrappy prototype. They talk about the minimum viable product, which is your most valuable player too. You just, what's the minimum you can do in order to test whether this works? And that works really well for products and services, but you can still relate that to art. You can still say, okay, this is where I'm at. This is what I've got. Let's test that. Because that's what I've got.
And see what your responses are. As I like to remind people, it's not like there's a blacklist, right? It's not like you send out a not so great, something that's not developed enough, and an art director says, this isn't for me. And that means you can never contact them again, like in 2 years when you're way better, or a year when you've improved or gotten closer. It's not like
it's not
they will never, this is your one shot only that you can reach out to them. So it's like evolve,
testing that client in this moment with this particular piece of work. There are so many different variables, and yeah, you're right. It's not a pass or fail situation. It's a testing. And if you look at any really successful business and you try and find online the first iteration of their website, you'd be like, oh,
yeah,
that doesn't look great, because it didn't, but they got started. And you learn so much more by starting and tweaking than you do by trying to launch a perfect product.
Agreed.
And so your experience rate and your growth rate and your business growth rate goes like this if you test and you just keep trying. Whereas if you wait to launch the perfect design, the perfect product with the perfect email to the perfect client on the perfect website, you're still down here. You've not done anything yet. You're not actually doing anything. And so it's just get started, because that person who was a bit scrappy has at least started taking that action and learning and receiving that feedback and tweaking according to what works and what doesn't, rather than guessing and then creating what you think is the perfect product that nobody wants.
It's true. They've done studies on it. One of my favorite, I've this book called Stretch. it's a book about like using your using what you've got, you know, making your resources count. And they were talking about the study that was done where, yeah, these computer companies, they like analyzed these, you know, they were putting products out in the world, and the ones that were more successful were actually the ones that launched quicker. And it was because, for a couple of reasons they realized, but because they were basing their product on the information they had at that moment, rather than trying to predict the future and figure out every possible outcome and all that stuff. And that was one reason, but there was some others, but it was such an interesting thing. I was like, yes, this is what I
yeah, another really good book for that is The Toilet Paper Entrepreneur.
Okay.
And by Mike Michalowicz, and I'm sure I'm saying his name wrong because it's one of those ones with way too many Polish
yeah.
things that I can never quite get right. But he has a lot of good business books, but this one's really good. And he makes, it's a rather gross analogy, but he's saying, if you only have 5 sheets of toilet paper left, you make it work and you still get the job done.
Right. Fair enough. Yes.
Which is like, that's not the classiest
that's the dude. That sounds like my 7-year-old son would want to make that, but yeah, sure. Fair enough. We get it.
But it's an effective analogy, because it's basically saying, use what you've got. And it comes up with a bare minimum of the things that you need, the sort of the documents you need in place. It's not like a full business plan, because you can't create that when you're just starting, but it's like a mission statement. Write something that you feel passionate about, that gets you excited. He says, ideally, it should make you cry when you read it, because that's your why. Now you know that you've really hit on your purpose. And, you know, and then look at the metrics that you need to measure, and then have quarterly plans for each little stage that you're going through. And it's just a really, really nice book in terms of giving you the bare minimum, but really useful stuff too.
I love that. Well, let's bring it back to surface patterns specifically. Though I love all this like creative business information. I think this is all super useful. But we're going to dip into my new segment, my new interview segment, which right now is just called Hot Topics, where we're going to go through, I'm going to go through 3 different, we'll start with one obviously, but different scenarios where people have received conflicting advice, right? Certain people say one thing, certain people say other things, and there is no right answers. You'll hear these topics. There isn't really a right answer, but I was just curious what your opinion is on each of these. And I'll obviously throw my opinion in, because you couldn't stop me if you tried. So let's dig in. The first one is, people have heard or been advised that either you need a recognizable style to get an agent, or you don't need a recognizable style to get an agent. You can just get an agent, you know, whenever, basically.
I guess it depends on what the agent's looking for.
Yeah, it really does.
Really. I mean, I know that my agent appreciates somebody who can create lots of different styles, and definitely has, and in fact, you've interviewed her about this. You know, she has, one of the artists can be very different in the way she creates work, and that's really helpful because that appeals to lots of different clients. So having lots of different styles and lots of different abilities can make you a really useful artist in terms of providing a service for all those different clients.
Yeah, it really does depend on the agent. I agree. Because I think I don't know, I've interviewed my agent as well, or the CEO, at least, Julie. But because they do focus a little more on licensing rather than buyouts and more like commissioned work, I feel like it seems that having that sort of standout style that you might come with, I didn't have it when I started, but that was 8 years ago. Now they have a large roster, you know, and I know that they don't ever want to sign someone who does something very similar to their other artists. So I'm not saying for sure that's what Jewel wants, but I can see how some agents might prefer a recognizable style. But in general, I didn't have that when I signed on. And as you said, even currently, you know, Brenda that's not important. So I think that wherever you're at, if you want an agent, you go for it. It's my opinion.
And it depends on their client list, like, because they're working with lots of different clients. There are some clients who want to have a recognizable style because they want to create like a series of calendars or something like that. And they also want to have that, be able to do that artist name drop with style. So if you've got a famous artist, someone who's really well known, then you can put their name on something, and now that licensing deal is worth much more to them because people will buy it because they're a fan of whoever's work it is. But if you're not, then that's not going to appeal to them because they can't create a whole calendar off from an unknown artist's work that doesn't quite mesh together throughout the whole thing because they're not a signature artist. But somebody who's looking for designs on their Christmas collection and they're not putting the artist name on it anyway because it's not about the artist, it's about fitting in with their collection, they don't care. They just want the art.
Yeah, exactly. That makes sense. All right. Well, the second conflicting advice people have heard is you need to create 100 designs to get started in this business versus you only need 10 to 20.
Oh my gosh. Just start, do 10, get them out, see what happens.
Yeah.
It's like what I was saying is, yeah, okay, you can have 100 designs and then find out that 90 of them are not what people wanted and you wasted all that time creating them.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm definitely, I mean, I'm one person who gives that advice of the 10 to 20. I know obviously there's different, different people who say different things, but I for sure say you only need 10 to 20 to start pitching. Now it might not be your first 10 to 20, like the first 10 designs you've ever created. And I think that's where some of that 100 designs advice is. It's like getting that practice in because your first couple designs are not like amazing. You're still figuring out what a repeat is or how to illustrate within a space or whatever it is.
That makes sense.
But if you have Bex, you having had experience before, even when you were new to product design, you still had, you said you kept a sketchbook all those years and plus you went to art school. So, if you already have a set of art skills, maybe you certainly don't need 100 designs. But you probably are better off at the beginning,
Totally. But my first spoonflower pattern didn't match up. Because I didn't know how to create repeating patterns. I had to I learned all that from scratch. I was literally doing drawings in pencil and pens. That's all I did.
And
I didn't have any digital stuff. And then I had to learn. I'd never used Photoshop. I'd never used Illustrator. I'd never used an iPad to draw. And so my learning curve was still steep because I had to learn the tools of this particular industry and I needed to be able to, and I know that my agent wouldn't have been able to take me on. One of her requirements is that you can create repeat patterns, including half drop repeats. Otherwise she's not going to consider you. Right.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, as far as having a portfolio full of 100 designs, I don't think that's necessary by any stretch, because by the time you get to number 99, your number one is looking sad, and you're probably then you start overthinking that one and blah blah blah. So
start again to make it all.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, all right, start. Yeah, exactly. Totally.
Just share.
All right, and then the last one is you need to put your work on social media to get it out there, or you should keep it private because some clients don't want work that has already been out in the world on social media.
Personally, I've never met a client that minded it being on social media, and some of them have found it on social media. So social media, you don't have to be on social media, but it's free. So you may as well. And the good thing, I like to think about Instagram as a sort of backup art journal / portfolio, rather than thinking about, oh, it's important how many followers I get. It's just another useful tool that's free to put your work online, and you can direct people to it so they can see what you're up to. They get a bit more of an idea of your personality. You can see work in progress shots. It's not as perfectly curated as perhaps your website portfolio is. So they can see a little bit more about what you're about. And I quite like it because if you scroll right the way back to the beginning of my Instagram, you can see from before I got an iPad, when I was still doing pencil and pen drawings. And I love seeing that progression. So it is like a sort of online art journal.
Yeah, that's exactly what I say. It's like a second portfolio, or really a more updated one, because my website really needs to be, I don't put new art on my website as frequently as I do on Instagram. So
yeah, as long as you don't just get too sucked into feeding the beast and worrying too much about followers and likes, and because it really doesn't make much difference, because if most of these people on Instagram are other artists, they're not your clients necessarily, depending on what your product is and how you make your money. If you've got an online shop, maybe they are, but if you're trying to get your licensing deals, then they're they're not just trawling Instagram all day. They've got other things to be doing. You'd be better off emailing them.
Right.
So yeah, but don't hide work behind a password protected website until you get to the stage where your clients start saying to you, we would prefer to see your work that other people haven't seen yet. And once you're in that level of demand and clients are requesting that, then by all means, set it all up and be exclusive. But most people aren't. I'm not there.
Yeah. Same.
So
same. Yeah, no, totally. That's exactly what I agree, you know, just put it out there. And I really, the only thing that I keep behind, and, you know, we have the same, fabric licensee, whatever. We both work with Camelot, but so like if I create a collection for them and I know it's coming out, whatever, they're going to release it in 3 months, I might show a little sneak peek of like one print, but I wouldn't necessarily put it all on social media if I know that I've created kind of specifically for a release for them.
Oh, yeah.
But that's only because I've been working with them for whatever, 4 years or 5 years. So
yeah, if I'm working on something specific for a client, I never share client commissions.
Yeah. All right. Well, those were our hot topics for today. And I am so glad that I got a chance to chat with you. I'm going to obviously put all your links below to your website, to your multiple income sources, Skillshare course, and your Instagram, so we can all scroll back and see what you used to do.
see my dodgy pencil drawings.
Yeah. But thank you so much for joining us, Bex.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. That was super fun.
In the description of all my YouTube videos, I have a link to elizabethsilver.com/fresh, which will take you to sign up for my Surface Pattern Boss Toolkit. Once you sign up, you'll get an email to confirm, and then you'll get the password to get into this toolkit where you can find all kinds of resources, surface pattern job guide, business advice, all kinds of trend reports, plus bonus videos, and access to the archives from my newsletters where I have all kinds of cool links and useful creative business advice that you can check out. So I hope you go down to the link and join me. I'd love to have you. And while you're at it, hit subscribe and check out more videos on my channel.